Turn now to page 3-14. Here we see a summary of the indicative mood endings. Notice that there are 3 sets of endings given on this page. These are just the active voice endings in the indicative mood. In these paradigms, you'll see a 1s, or a 2s, or a 3s. That simply means first singular, second singular, or third singular. You'll see a 1p. That means first plural. 2p, which means second plural. Or 3p. That means third plural. Here the endings are given to you in set 1. This first set of endings is sometimes called the omega endings because the first person singular is the ending omega. Second person ending is ace. And the third person singular ending is a. And I show you an example of this ending as it is used in the verb luo, the first person singular omega, as in the verb luo, and you see the omega on the end of the verb. The second person singular ending ace, as in luace. The third person singular ending as in the verb lue. The first plural ending is omen, and notice there is the connecting vowel attached right before the ending, as in the verb luomen. The second person plural ending is ete, and again there is that connecting vowel epsilon right before the ending te, as in the verb luete. And the third plural ending is usi, or usin. Notice that there is a nu at the end of this ending in parentheses. The reason for that is that sometimes the nu is present on the end of this ending, and sometimes it's not. We call this a movable nu. In classical Greek, the nu was present if the next word began with a vowel. But if the next word be consonant, that nu would not be present. In the Greek of the New Testament, Koine or Hellenistic Greek, this rule is usually violated. And generally, the movable nu is present in text. Let's look at the second set of endings. Sometimes these endings are called the nu endings because the last letter in this ending, singular, is nu. So the first singular ending with the connecting vowel in front of it is on, as in eluon. Now notice the epsilon in front of this word, telling us that this set of endings is used for past tense verbs. The second singular ending is s, as in elues. Again, notice the temporal augment in front of the verb showing us past time. The third singular ending is an epsilon connecting vowel and a movable nu. Technically, that's not an ending. It's simply a connecting vowel and a movable nu. But generally, we will see the epsilon nu together and we will think of it as an ending, as in ep. And notice the parentheses around the nu telling us that sometimes that nu will not be there, but usually it is. It's called a movable nu. Look at the first plural ending, omen. Notice that it's just like the first plural ending in the set of endings right above it. The example, eluomen. The second plural ending, ete. And this ending is just like the set 1 ending for the second plural. And we have our example verb, eluete. The third plural ending is just like the first singular. and omicron nu. How would we know whether or not we are dealing with a first singular or a third plural? Context. Remember that context is everything. First singular, I have done something. Third plural would be they have done something. Look at the set 3 of endings. Sometimes these endings are called the alpha endings because the first singular ending is an alpha, as in the verb elusa. Again, notice the augment in front of this verb, telling us that it is past tense. The second person singular ending is an alpha sigma, as in elusas. See the alpha sigma on the end of the verb. The third singular, here again, just like in the second set of endings, is really not an ending. It is an epsilon connecting vowel and a movable nu. If you would like to think of it as an ending, though, that will be okay for the time being, as in the verb elusen. The first plural, here's the ending men again, but look, the connecting vowel is an alpha instead of an omicron, as in the verb elusamen. The second plural ending is ate. Well, the ending te is just like it was in the first two sets of endings, but now we have an alpha connecting vowel, as in the verb elusate. And the third plural ending is an, as in the verb elusan. Now turn to page 3-15. Here we see not active endings, but rather middle and passive endings. We're not going to discuss these today, but I simply want you to know where they are in your. Turn now to page 3-16, and here we see a graphical display of the active indicative verb endings. Here is set 1. First person singular, second singular, third singular, and here are the endings. The first singular ending is omega, the second singular ace, third singular a. The first plural, omen. The second plural, ete. The third plural, usin. Set 2 endings, called the new endings. The first singular, on. The second singular, s. The third singular, n. The first plural, omen. The second, ete. The third plural, on. Look at set 3, the alpha endings. The first singular, a. The second singular, as. The third singular, n. The first plural, amen. The second person plural, ate. And the third person plural, an. This page will give you a convenient way to memorize the various endings of the indicative mood active voice. Turn now to page 3-17, and you'll see the same kind of chart, but for the middle and passive endings. Again, I simply want you to know that this page is here, but at this point we're not ready to learn these endings. Turn now to page 3-18, and we see a summary of the indicative mood, the tense formations. Here we see first the present tense active voice. The first singular is the verb form luo. See the omega on the end of that verb? That is your first singular ending. The second singular form of the present tense active voice, indicative mood, is the verb lues. The third singular of the present tense active voice indicative mood is the verb lue. The first plural of the present tense, active voice, indicative mood, is the verb luomen. The second plural is luete, and the third plural is luusin. With that paradigm as a model, now you can look at the other paradigms. Number 2 shows you the future tense, active voice, indicative mood. Notice that the only difference between the future tense formations and the present tense formations is that the future tense has a sigma tense indicator placed right before the personal ending. Look at the third set of endings, the imperfect tense, active voice, indicative mood. Notice that in the imperfect tense, we're looking at past time. How do you know that? Well, you see there an temporal augment, the epsilon, in front of each one of these verb forms. Turn now to page 3-19, and you'll see more paradigms of various tenses, active voice, indicative mood. The second aorist. Don't worry about what that is at this point. We'll talk about the second aorist at a later time. Number 5 shows the pluperfect. Number 6 shows the first aorist. And number 7 shows the perfect tense. Turn to page 3-, and here we see similar paradigms, but the middle passive voice. Again, at this point, we won't concern ourselves with the middle passive voice, but simply know that the information is here. Likewise, on page 3-21, middle passive voice, and page 3-22. Now turn to 3-23, and here we see some detailed paradigms of the active indicative verb forms. Notice that when this kind of symbol is indicated in the paradigm, it is telling us that there is no ending added. Watch out, though, that you do not confuse them with the Greek letter phi. An arrow shows us the resulting form found in the text. And a nu within parentheses indicates a movable nu. Remember that sometimes this nu is present and sometimes it's not. Now let's look in a more detailed way at the present active indicative verb form. We're still using the example verb luo, I break. In these detailed paradigms, you see that we have taken the verb stem, to which we have added a connecting vowel, and to which we have added an ending, giving us the final result, underlined, and underneath that, a suggested translation of the final form. Now notice on this first verb form of the present active indicative, we have our verb stem, an omicron connecting vowel, to which nothing is added. When you see something like this, pay attention to these notes that are given in the grayed boxes to the left. They will explain what is happening. For example, it explains to us here that in the first person singular, the connecting vowels from an omega, from an omicron, to the long O, which is an omega. Technically, there is no personal ending added here. But we've come to think of that omega on the end of this verb as the first singular ending. So when you see the verb luo, we will translate that I am breaking, or I break. The I is indicated by that omega on the end of the verb. Look at the second person singular ending. Again, we have our verb stem lu, to which we add the connecting vowel epsilon and the ending epsilon sigma. Now look at your sidebar note and let's see what is happening here. It tells us that in the third person singular, the following contraction takes place. A contraction is where two vowels are added together to give a resulting diphthong or a resulting long vowel. And it tells us to refer to the contraction chart in section 1 of our grammar, located on page 111. If you turn to that section, you would see that when an epsilon is added to another epsilon, the result is the diphthong epsilon iota. So that's what's happening here. We have an epsilon connecting vowel, and we add this ending epsilon sigma, and when those two epsilons combine, we get the result diphthong epsilon iota. So our resulting form here is lues. Second person singular, be translated you are breaking or you break. In the third singular, we have our verb stem lu, to which we add an epsilon connecting vowel and an epsilon ending. Now we have already seen that when two epsilons combine, the result is the diphthong epsilon iota. So our resulting form here is lue, third singular, he, she, or it is breaking, or he, she, or it breaks. Look at the first plural. Again, we have our verb stem lu, to which we add an omicron connecting vowel, and to that we add our first plural active ending, men, which means we. We put that together, and the resulting form is luomen, luomen, and that would be translated, we are breaking, or we break. The second plural is the stem lu, to which we add the connecting vowel epsilon, and to that we add our personal ending te. Te is the second plural, meaning you plural. We put those three elements together and we get the resulting form luete, luete. You plural, are breaking, or you break. The third plural is a little bit more complex. You see we have the verb stem lu, to which we add an omicron connecting vowel and an ending consisting of nu, sigma, iota, and a movable nu. What happens here is that when nu is followed by sigma, it falls away. It elides. Anything which is said to elide means that it falls away. Refer to the side note here and it explains what is happening. In the third person plural ending, the nu followed by sigma elides, and the preceding connecting vowel goes through compensatory lengthening. That means the nu falls away when it's followed by sigma. The vowel in front of the nu has to compensate for the loss of that nu, and so that vowel goes through what we call compensatory lengthening. Compensatory lengthening is explained in section 1 on page 1-8. The resulting form then, as you see, would be luusin. The u comes from the omicron having gone through compensatory lengthening. When an omicron goes through compensatory lengthening, it becomes the diphthong u. So we wind up with the form luusin. For right now, if you would simply like to learn that usin is the third plural ending, that would be sufficient. If you didn't really understand the derivation of what we just went through, that's okay at this point. A little these things will make more sense, we hope. Now the third plural is they are breaking or they break.